40 years ago, you were instrumental in the Family Research Council. Take us back and give us the origins of the beginning of the Family Research Council. How did it all start?
Well, Tony, the history of the Family Research Council, that is one of the most coveted experiences of my life, because it goes back to 1980 when President Jimmy Carter decided there was going to be a White House conferences on the family. So it was a very liberal conference, but I was invited to come and speak, and everybody else that spoke there came from a very liberal point of view, obviously, and I didn't. And I spoke very differently than they did. The crowd was gracious, and afterward, James Guy Tucker, who was the director of the White House conferences, came up to see me, and he said, "I want to tell you something. People like you who have professional degrees and have come from a different point of view, a major university, those people do not come to this city. They're not invited here, so this is a rarity." And he said, "This town ought to hear what you have to say because it is never heard here." And I went back, I had 7 buddies, there were 8 of us there that night, and I told them what he had said, and we all agreed we have to change that. The voice of biblical truth as related to the family must be represented in this town. We got on our knees that night and prayed. And we asked the Lord to bless what we were going to try to do, because it was not going to be easy. And that was the beginning of the Family Research Council. That's what was organized that day.
We look at the terrain today, and we look at the journey that Christians engaged in public policy have been on. What do you see today?
Well, you know, Tony, I have the long perspective because I was a professor of pediatrics at USC School of Medicine and Children's Hospital of Los Angeles for 17 years. And I could have spent the rest of my life there. I could have enjoyed doing research and being in academia.
And everybody loving you.
Oh, it was nice. You know, there's a lot of...
When you step out into this arena, not everybody likes what you have to say.
Well, I walked into a buzzsaw, I can tell you that, because I left there to focus on the family.
And I'll just say the country is so much better because you stepped into that buzzsaw.
Well, you're very kind. The first thing that hit was here in Colorado, there was Amendment 2, which became so controversial. I had just arrived in town. The gay activists there didn't have anybody to blame for that loss from their point of view, and they decided to tear me up. We had the bloody animal parts brought to our door. I'm here, I'm a new guy in town coming out of a medical school, not used to stuff like that. And they told lies about us, and it was really pretty difficult. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and my point of view, lost. We've lost most of the big battles along the way. And I think maybe things are changing now. The pastors seem much more aware of the battle that we're in. We serve a big God, and we can't give up.
Speaking of that long game and that long view, on the issue of life, the sanctity of human life. And we took a lot of criticism for being involved in elections, electing pro-life candidates, pro-life presidents. But look where it's led us, to a point where in our lifetime, we've seen the overturn of Roe v. Wade and an opportunity for the nation to get it right when it comes to the sanctity of human life.
You know, I will admit to you, I never thought it would happen. I really didn't have the faith to believe the court would awaken one day and say, this is wrong, we've got to change it. But it's a marvelous thing that happened, and of course, the far left is still furious over this, and it's not, the battle's not over, you know. There are 50 states out there that are going to have to deal with this issue. And so we're going to fight tooth and nail to try to save this country from itself.
So let's talk for just a moment to the believers that, as you said, it's becoming brutal. You know, if you're a Christian and you openly profess your faith and you live according to your faith, there's some professions that are driving you out. It's becoming more difficult to live out our faith, but that's the very thing we should be doing. What do Christians need to be doing right now in this hour?
Standing firm. I think our country's in great jeopardy. The things that are taking place right now are breathtaking to me. You know, there's been no time in the history of this country except the Civil War when we've been so divided and there's been so much hatred and so much wickedness and people calling good evil and evil good. We have got to be salt and light in a dark and stormy culture. When people say to me, especially Christian people and especially pastors, who say, well, we don't get into that because we're not political. They're bragging about not being political. It's not political, it's moral. We're talking about killing babies. We're talking about teaching 5-year-olds more immorality on a daily basis in the public schools. We're talking about things that would have been unconscionable a few years ago. We cannot give up. And we've got the Lord on our side. We can't forget that. We're not alone in this thing. The Lord has called us to a battle. He's called us to fight with everything that we have.
I know there's been times of discouragement where things didn't work out the way you thought they would or should. And I'm sure there was some temptations at times, maybe to step out of this arena and go where it was a little more friendly. What kept you at it?
Tony, I never considered stepping away because I was called to this. My father told me right before he died that he had a vision of my reaching millions of people around the world. That was unheard of. That was crazy. How could one lone voice here have the opportunity to speak in China and Russia and India and other places around the world? There's an anointing there. I don't know how to explain it. I certainly don't think I'm responsible for it. My job is just to be faithful and to hang in there. And I'm going to do that as long as I've got a voice. And today I don't have much of a voice, but it's craggy and I'm doing the best I can to talk over it. But we're not going to give up as long as I've got breath in my body.
Well, you've reached those millions and you've done it well. And we're grateful that you were never tempted to get out of the arena.
You're doing the same thing, Tony. You've had to face exactly the same issues that I have, and you've been faithful too. And I guess that's why I love you so much.
Well, it's mutual. Thank you.